Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Mondays is my good friend, Michele Berra. Michele, what's up?
Well, maybe you can tell that I'm not in my usual location. So, finger crossed. It might be a terrible podcast or a good one. Who knows? It depends on the mountains LTE, which is not reliable, but what we have.
Wow. Yeah, it's also listen, Michele. It's Monday, August 19th. There is no NBA news. We had schedule drop last week. We're gonna kind of go through the schedule a little bit today to talk about some of like the difficult stretches and really just talk through it like month by month, like what you can look for trends, where are the difficult stretches. There are some long homestands that exist within it. And I thought we could talk through that and maybe through some of the in-season tournament stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of just compelling things to talk through. The schedule, I'm going to throw, if you're listening on the podcast app, I'm going to throw the schedule up on our YouTube screen here. So we have several people that are in the chat. Several very patient, gracious people who've been waiting on me since some of you've been waiting since 1 p.m. And I do very much apologize for making you guys wait because I scheduled it and then had something come up um, and so now here we are. First, before we
Can
get started,
I can
yeah,
I
go ahead.
hijack the podcast completely?
Yeah.
We didn't talk, I think, after the Olympics.
Yeah.
I watched that game
Yeah.
and it was like, wow, this is I have no idea why people say that European basketball is better than NBA basketball. It's just flat out not true. There is nobody in Europe that can do whatever Curry has
Mm-hmm.
done in the Olympics. It was so much fun. It was just, hey, this man is incredible.
Yep.
And sometimes we tend to say, oh, they play nice. Oh, look how Serbia is playing as a choral unit, or look how Germany crisp passing. But I mean, do you watch the 100 meters dash to watch how elegantly a guy runs?
Nope.
No, you want to see the guy just fight up to the last inch of the race just to be the best. And Steph Curry just did that, and it was just outstanding basketball. It is why we watch this sport. It is why we watch the NBA, because in the NBA there are talents like this one, and thank God OKC has a lot of them. Like, yeah,
Totally. Yeah. That game was incredible. I think if you're, how would you feel today if you are a Chicago Bulls fan after watching Team Australia and specifically Dutch Youth?
I watched two games, so not too much, because I as I told everyone, I planned my vacation to be around the Olympics, without checking the dates, and I completely picked the wrong weeks. So I had to work a lot, and I didn't have much time. But I think that in moments, you could see why Josh Giddey can work as a primary ball handler. I think that the aggressiveness that he showed, especially early in games, is encouraging. Um, does that mean that I would redo the trade like that? Probably not, because I would have done it in the first place. Like, Caruso for Giddy is not a value trade for Chicago. Can it be a value trade in 3 years? Sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to. I would say you have to go under in terms of value. It's the same as Paul George for Domas and Depot. That
Hmm.
is a trade that in time was a good trade for both parts. But at
Yeah.
the time, Indiana should have gotten more. And I feel the same in this situation. And I hope
Hmm.
that for Chicago, it works exactly the same that worked for Indiana. Because I mean, I really I hope that Giddy is what we think he can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still a believer in Josh
Sorry.
Giddey. Bless you. I'm still a believer in Josh Giddey. And I think
Mhm.
I don't love the Chicago situation, mostly just because I don't love anything the Bulls have done in recent history. Um,
No love for Billy?
no, not a lot of love for Billy. No,
Not a lot. Okay. Some love, though.
there's some love there.
Good.
Speaking of some love for Billy Donovan, or maybe even no love at all for Billy Donovan, I saw Deontay Burton at the gas station on
Wow.
what day was that? Was that Saturday? Um, yeah, it was one of those. Oh no, this was Friday. It was just a stroke of just complete just luck, fate, faith. I don't know what you want to call it, but I'm walking into 7-Eleven. I was getting gas for my mower, got a new mower. Walking into 7-Eleven, and a really tall guy is walking in next to me wearing an OKC blue shirt. And we literally met at the door because we're walking in at the exact same time. And I look up at him, and it is Deontay Burton. And I look at his face and I say, Deontay Burton. And, I kind of refreshed his memory as to who I was. And I covered the Thunder, and like we chatted for a little while, and he was super kind. It was great to see him again. He, and I asked him about the Paul George podcast where he talked to, did you see this clip where,
No.
so Paul George brings up, somebody was asking him about, somehow they were talking about Zion and like guys that, were Zion before Zion and all this mess. But he brought up Deontay Burton, and he talked about how
Yeah.
he didn't get why Deontay didn't play. And, he was locking guys up. He was scoring off the dribble. He was doing all this stuff. And I was like, Deontay, I just have to know, like, what you thought when Paul George said that. Because, like, I was like, obviously you've heard this. And he's like, yeah, I've heard this. And he said, it really helped. He said, one, it really made me feel really good. He said, and it kind of made me not feel crazy, because I felt the same way at the time. Like, I need a chance. Like, I need more of a chance. I need to play more. And if you go back and listen to Pass It Down to Dunk episodes in like 2017 or 17, 18, and 19, hey, we talked. I was all on the Deontay Burton train too. So, anyways, it's very kind. He had his dogs in the car with him, and it was just incredible and strange moment in time. But shout out to Deontay Burton, who's still is trying to make it back in the league. I asked him, like, what are you up to? He's doing like this G League showcase, where he's trying to get back in the league. And so hopefully it all works out. We would all love to see Deontay Burton back in the NBA, but it was fun running into him. Okay. Let's talk through the schedule.
Yay! No Christmas game. Shame.
No Christmas. No Martin Luther King. That actually, like, I was mad about the Christmas thing, but the no Martin Luther King Day, I would have sworn, even after they don't pick them to play on Christmas, that surely they're going to pick them to play on MLK Day. Not even on MLK Day. That's crazy. That's just crazy to me. Not even on April Fool's Day do they get to play. Just an absolute disaster. An absolute disaster.
Well, maybe this is OKC just enjoying some family time in both dates. That is good.
That is the silver lining, if there is one. Okay, so let's talk through this October-November stretch. So the Thunder start in Denver and on the road in Chicago. So we don't get to see the Thunder at home until a Sunday 6 p.m. tip against the Atlanta Hawks. First, just like thoughts on the Thunder. I think the Thunder, there's already like betting odds. And Thunder are, I think they're like 2.5-point dogs to the Nuggets on night one. But just thoughts on them playing Denver night one in Denver.
I mean, it's a nice opening. I mean, at least we have that.
Yep.
It's oddly similar to what they had last year. I mean, there is no Cleveland in the first two games, but they had, I think, last year Chicago, Cleveland, and then Denver, something like that, or Denver in the first few games.
Yeah, their first home game was against Denver, and they got humiliated by Denver in that game. I mean, it was I remember because I took my family to the game. I had tickets for my family for the game, and they just got embarrassed.
Yeah. I think that it's nice to get Denver on day one of the regular season, because they want to get out. OKC will want to get out and be the theme.
Yeah.
Um, it's um, it's like after the All-Star break when everybody wanted to talk about the Thunder and a lot of media. I think Zach Lowe said that, but many others. Yeah, Thunder, show me. Show me against the Clippers after the All-Star break, and they demolished them.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it might have been someone else and not Zach Lowe, but I remember it was something like, "Hey, the Clippers are a great team. OKC is a young up and coming. Let's see where they are at." And I know that Denver is no longer the title holder, but in the Western Conference, you have to beat Denver in order to be something. In order to play on Christmas Day, apparently you need to beat the Nuggets. Otherwise, you don't. Which is why Mini is playing and OKC is not apparently. But anyhow, I think it's a nice way, and Chicago after that, it's not a soft game, mainly because Chicago will want to show as well that they have new stuff. I don't know what's the strategy of Chicago. I really hope they tank hard, which is what they should do. But even teams that tank super duper hard in the first 10, 15 games, they might win 4, 5, 6 even, and
Mhm.
then be different in a couple of weeks slash months. So it's not an easy beginning. It's softened a little bit for the two home games and for the third road game.
Yep.
And then you have the Destiny game, the game that will probably mean nothing to anybody. But I mean, the Clippers are the second story for the Thunder this season. So to meet
Totally.
them twice in the first month and a half of the season is it's interesting. They have to demolish them. OKC has all the incentive to just
Oh,
steamroll them twice.
yeah. Just beat Portland by 20, sit everybody in the fourth quarter, and just be ready to go to the Intuit Dome and just demolish them.
Yeah.
I was looking at that game against Denver, the first home game of the season last year. Do you remember how many points Shea had in that game?
Yes, 7.
7 points. The last time he had 7 points or less in a game was December 16th, 2019
Yeah.
against the Chicago Bulls. Back when that was his second season, whenever he's in this new role with the Thunder and he averaged 20 points per game that year. I mean, he played really well, but it's just bizarre. It's bizarre to think about Shea's season last year and to think that there was a game that he didn't get hurt in that he only scored 7 points. It was just
Yeah.
a very, very bizarre game in which he didn't have single digit scoring, one more time. That was the only time. It was that first home game. It was just crazy. But we get Chet versus Wimby twice on national television
Yeah.
this month. So, once at home on Wednesday night and then on the road on the 19th of November. So that's also fun. There's several back-to-backs. Portland Clippers, which is a road back-to-back. You have Golden
2
State
times
Clippers.
against the Clippers.
Yeah, I know. Second night of a back-to-back against the Clippers twice.
Yeah.
You have a home, which is Golden State and Clippers. That'll be a really fun back-to-back on the
Yeah.
10th and 11th of November. Like that would be super fun. And then somehow Portland keeps getting put on these back-to-backs too. You have San Antonio and Portland, which is a road home back-to-back, which is
But it's a short one.
yeah, it is. And they have this long homestand that like they basically get home on the 7th of November and they don't go back on the road until the 18th of November. So they are at
Yeah.
home for Houston, Warriors, Clippers, Pelicans, Phoenix, Mavericks, that's just I mean, that's great. That's honestly like amazing for the team. Amazing. They'll get to practice probably
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4 times, would be my guess, which is massive at the beginning of a season, especially for a young team like the Thunder. Um, that would be great because you'll be coming off training camp. You get to have this little stretch of games, and then you're just going to be at home, which I think that could be an extremely fruitful time for
Yeah.
the team to kind of get a lot of things together. And you're playing really quality opponents too, which is difficult. Like it's difficult to play a good team night after night after night, but to get that kind of competition plus the practice time that you'll have when you're at home is just extremely valuable. So uh, that is going to be a good month for the Thunder just to kind of get things together. Um, okay,
Yeah, and it's really like it's not even a road game, the one against San Antonio. It's again a 1 day, 1.5 day kind of
Mm,
thing, which is almost not some
true.
working on the road. So it's a very long time between the 7 and the 24 or
Yeah,
23rd because
yeah,
they will likely fly to Sacramento on Sunday for the game on the 25th. So a good month to have an extended training camp, basically, where you play roughly,
yes,
well, not roughly, let's count them, 7 games and 8 games, and then you're up for a long homestand, and then where you can really tune in a few stuff.
yeah, yeah. That'll be an interesting evaluation point. Like the first 7 games versus what happens the rest of the month, and like what changes, how do they evolve, how
Yeah,
do they get better? Because that's just these big homestands are just a really good opportunity to get better and to
yeah,
really evaluate what you're doing when you're on the road, when you're home road, and just like bouncing all over the place. It is that is like those are the really difficult days of being in the NBA because you don't get a ton of chances to like really catch your breath. And when you
yeah,
get to sleep in your own bed for that long in the NBA is pretty unusual. Um,
yeah,
so that's pretty cool. December, December is now forever going to be changed because of the NBA Cup,
yeah,
and we'll see how the Thunder fare in these games. Just to go back, so they have Phoenix and San Antonio as their first 2 group play games, um, which will be very important. Those can go. I mean, it's one game; they can go in any direction. But like just to
yeah.
circle, the 15th of November and the 19th of November are 2 games um, against two. I mean, San Antonio. I would call Phoenix a quality opponent. I would call San Antonio a
A
budding
will see
rival.
opponent.
Yeah, I mean they could play great. We've seen they played. They had some games where they played great
Yeah,
against OKC. And so you never want to like underestimate them, but also there were times where they were pretty terrible
yeah.
against
They
OKC.
should be.
Yeah, yeah, they should be. They also added veterans to the team.
Yeah,
Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul are going to help them just develop some level of competence. Around Wembanyama. I still think they're going to not be good. Whenever you look at the entire Western Conference, it's going to be tough for them to make a big impact just because night after night after night, like it's going to be tough. And I'm also from the Spurs, you know what? I don't want to be that good this year because I want to add another really good player next to Wimby. And that's when you start cooking
yeah,
with gas, is when you get another young player. I mean, ask the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like they really
yeah.
started cooking with gas when it was Shea, J-Dub,
And
and Chet.
Chet. Yeah,
You added Chet to it, and it was like, whoa. Like
this
the
is different.
now
Yeah,
this is crazy. And if you just had J-Dub and Shea, I think they would be good, but they would probably be like a middle of the pack team in the Western Conference.
yeah.
You know,
And the
like
second gun for the Spurs is not as good as J-Dub. I mean, Vassell is a very good player. Keldon Johnson may be an okay to average player. Um, Sohan, sure. Uh, I don't know.
yeah. No, there's nobody even close to J-Dub. Like
Yeah. And you can
not even
say that Wemby will be much better than anybody that OKC has. That is fine. That can happen. That is
sure.
probably okay. But still, having a second gun is so important.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about the Lakers on the 29th of November.
Yeah.
It's the third game of the Cup. I'm sure that LA wants to be in that venue, so it's a competitive game on the road. Um,
Yeah.
so that is a test. That is a Golden State, then LA, two nationally televised game on ESPN.
Yep.
Two very early wake ups for me. Yay! And yeah, exactly as I want my week to end. At least one is Friday. So
Yeah. No, that is a interesting way to end the month of November. Yeah. Yeah, getting 2 of those games there. Yeah, the Lakers are gonna be it's gonna be fascinating, and I cannot wait to see them play teams like the Lakers because now they actually have big guys. So
Yeah,
you actually
they
have
should they
Hartenstein.
should just steamroll the Lakers. I mean, if OKC is what I mean, everybody has in mind, teams that are in the middle, they should really, well,
Yeah, they
maybe
should
not
take.
destroy them, but they should take those games, especially if
Yeah,
they are meaningful.
yeah,
This
exactly.
is
Yeah,
this is what I want to see from the Thunder, which they showed already last year. They had very few hiccups for a young team. They lost games though in a pretty like distinctive way.
yep,
I want to see them going at their business, not like the 72 game winning Warriors, but like the Spurs that year. They should be a team that is very very good and be convinced that that is the way in which they play all nights,
yeah,
no matter if
yeah,
it's back to back. They have to be the team that shows, hey, we are here to destroy you every single night, and on most night we will. Some nights you can take us up to the last 5 minutes of the game, but just some nights. This
yeah,
is what I want to see because I think they are that good.
yep. I agree, and I think some of that will be the additions of Caruso and Hartenstein and the subtraction of Giddy. Because
Yeah,
like the truth about Josh Giddy last season is they spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out a way for him to fit.
yeah,
And there was a lot of games where it didn't work. There were some games that it did work, but there was clearly a lot of work being put in trying to make that a thing. And
yeah.
ultimately, it didn't end up paying off for them. And well, actually, it did end up paying off for them because they got the Chicago Bulls to take Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. So yes, it
Exactly.
paid off. But now you don't have to do that. And so to
Yeah,
me, early on, it's all about establishing style of play. And like you said, being consistent night in, night out with that style of play and allowing Caruso and Hartenstein to fit into that, which I think they will pretty seamlessly. And then just staying true to that. I also am going to look for things like how do they implement screening into their offense a little bit more, and then how are they passing? That was something that Presti talked about a lot at the end of season presser. Was like they need to find ways to just pass the ball better, and they need to
yeah.
move the ball better, and they need to get J Dub and Shea off the ball earlier so that they can get the ball back later. If you watch Boston, Boston isn't like they have good passers, but they don't have like some like crazy passing team, but they're all
They don't
competent.
have Chris Paul. They don't have
No,
like a Chris Paul that organized the action every single time.
no, they don't. But they all are competent enough passers and they established their style of play early and they dominated night after night after night because they did that. And they knew how they wanted to play and they went and played that way every single night. Whether Porzingis was in the lineup or not, didn't really matter
Yeah,
because they had guys like Horford that could step in and kind of do the same things. And so with the Thunder, it's going to be about the same stuff. And a lot of times, what they did is they got Jalen Brown and Tatum off the ball early, and then got them in better position later through screening, through different actions, and got them in great positions. And I want to see the Thunder do that because the
yeah.
ISO ball that happened toward the end of the Mavericks series, when it was just like, okay, we don't have a way to generate these easy looks, because the Mavericks are shutting down our drives. Well, now it just becomes about ISO ball when it could have been more about getting off ball, moving the ball, and getting yourself in better position to make that drive or to take that shot. And so I'm hopeful to see too early on in this next season the Thunder establish style of play in a really strong way, which I kind of expect them to. But I
Yeah.
just think that those are the kind of things that I'm looking for, especially in those first, few weeks, is like what does their style of play look like and how much ISO ball exists within it.
Yeah, I really hope they get into the top 10 in terms of um, three pointers attempt because that
Oh,
is something that they should do. They have too many guns.
yep,
Um, they
yep,
just have to. And I mean, the fact that Josh played and the fact that Lou Dort is not respected as a 3-point shooter, I think that
yep,
those things are about to change because Lou Dort will take threes at a better rate. He's
yep,
improving as a shooter, and if it's not his night, you have two guys that can take a spot, not just one. That was a rookie in the playoffs. I really expect big things from Cason Wallace. I
Mm,
think that he's kind of forgotten together with Topic, but I do think that this is again not really schedule related, but seeing Cason in big games, nationally televised game over and over again, so that he gets used to, hey, there is a gazillion um, media guys over here. It's everybody will see how I play nationwide, so it's different, and this will prepare him for the big stages because, to be honest, I mean, the playoffs and nationally televised game are similar, not the same, but the feeling, especially on some nights, can be similar. So I really hope they get to the tournament, because having some early tryout of, hey, this is a must-win game,
yep.
it's extremely important.
Hmm. Yeah. And they don't have all 82 games scheduled. We're still waiting. It could be played during the NBA Cup, which would be great to get that experience, to have kind of a neutral site game uh, against a quality opponent. And then if they don't, then they will schedule some games in during this December, 12th through the 16th. They'll play
Yeah,
some more games there. The Orlando Miami road back to back is actually not a bad one, just because the flight is really
it's very
not
short.
much. So that's really nice. Overall, not very many great opponents. They play a pretty soft December schedule, and it isn't as many games. They will, of course, like I said, schedule more games in here, so the schedule will look a little tougher when it's all done. But you get Houston, who's going to be in the middle of the pack, to back half of the West. Utah is going to be bad. Toronto is going to be bad. New Orleans is a tough one, but we don't know what their health looks like. And we also don't know, do they ever trade for a big man? Who knows? Um,
I would
Orlando,
not.
Miami. Yeah.
Full spoiler, I would just embrace the, hey, let's see how Zion plays as a center so that he doesn't have to move that much on defense.
Yeah.
And he's terrible. Who cares? We have too many great wings to worry about that. Let's
Yeah.
play that way for 25 games. And if we are terrible, then we will just I don't know, we'll just call Atlanta and say, hey, can we do another trade? Can we get Capella here as well? Can we?
They need to trade BI.
Yeah, but I don't know what's the value of BI right now. I mean, do you want to trade him just for the sake of not having him?
Yeah.
What's a realistic trade? I don't have any idea. They can trade with the Clippers, maybe, just to
Yeah.
have Zubats and like filler. But is that what you want? I mean, the Clippers may want to do it because, I mean, at least you get some star power and you don't have to pay Zubats next year. So maybe you do something, but it's so like, and probably you can't for very weird Abram rules. So
Yeah.
it's going to be very hard because the Clippers don't they're not in a nice salary cap position. So
No. Neither are the Pelicans, frankly.
yeah. So they have to match dollar for dollar, something like that. I don't know. We need to ask John, but it's
We always need John Hamm. Yeah. But then
Utah
they did.
was a name for BI, but it's not any longer because
Who is?
they
I
re
didn't.
up
What'd you say?
Utah, but they
Oh,
re up with Lowry, so it's not even a possibility now. I mean, it was discussed. I don't know how real it was. San
yeah.
Antonio, can they? Sure. Should
Would
they?
they? Would they?
Absolutely no.
No.
Would they? No. Why do you want to do that?
Um, I don't know. I would not want to do that if I were them. What about Miami? Is that crazy?
Um,
Is that just insane?
it's not the best partner for Jimmy because you
No, but
really
like
want
Jimmy may
to.
not be there for another year, anyways. I mean, he may be gone after a year. I think he's going to want to explore free agency.
And
The
and
problem is
and
like,
and so you take like a guy who can win you maybe 7 more games than what you should win. I don't want to do that.
yeah, I know.
If Jimmy goes, then I look Bam in the eye and say, hey, it's going to be rough for 2 years. You will play 20 games. Is that fine for you? Will be horrible, but in 3 years you may be the the guy that brings the Udonis Haslam of our times, where we get terrible, then we clear space, we get two very good young guys, maybe great guys, and we will sign someone because we are in Long Beach. So this is what I would do. Not having BI that moves the needle like it doesn't move it at all. So
What about Jared Allen and Karis LeVert for BI?
I don't think that Cleveland does that.
What if they include draft picks? They've got a lot of draft picks. New Orleans does.
And if you're New Orleans, this is what you want to do. I mean, sure. Then you have three guys that don't shoot the basketball on the court at the same time that you have to keep on the court at the same time.
Oh, they're kind of screwed. Okay, we can stop with that. We can stop trying to make Brandon Ingram happen. So they end the month with Washington, Indiana, Charlotte, which that week, it's light on games, which is great. Indiana will be fun. Washington, Charlotte, they should just demolish them. And then you end the month with Memphis and Minnesota at home in December, which I think will be a blast. Two home games, like circled those two home games in particular. It's a Sunday night and a Tuesday night. Like those are big time games for the Thunder. I think Memphis is circling Oklahoma City Thunder games themselves right now and saying like, that was us. That was supposed to be us. And through a series of injuries and John Morant just doing John Morant things, they have found themselves in just strange territory. And also, honestly, through some of the errors of their front office as well and the way that they've handled the roster construction. But those two games are going to be very, very fun. And it actually continues. Like this stretch of basketball is going to be incredible because it's going to be competitive and they're going to be fun games. A lot of these games are at home. So this stretch from December 29th, which the 31st is the New Year's Eve game, which will be a very fun New Year's Eve game, very competitive New Year's Eve game. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But it's Memphis, Minnesota, and this is a home stretch too. So this is another long home stretch, just similar to the one I talked about earlier, which I'm so glad it's competitive teams because you get practice time, you get reflection time, and you get to sleep in your own bed. But to play Memphis, Minnesota, the Clippers, the Knicks, and the Celtics all at home, the entire time at home is incredible. You get, whether they have like a great record after that or not, I think they'll be able to do great work during that time.
It's also 5 games in 7 nights, which is 28, 29, 30, 31, 1, 2, 3. It's a lot of games in a very compact amount of time.
It is. Yeah, you have back. You have the Charlotte Memphis back to back. Yeah, Memphis is on the second night of a back to back. Yeah, it's a good point. It is a ton of basketball, but I think it's such a cool opportunity because you are at home to really like put together some like good work and start preparing your team style of play wise and then just endurance wise for the playoffs. Like these are games like that. This is the time that I would circle. And then you look at what's after on the road in Cleveland, on the road in New York. And you have the Washington game on that Sunday, but you're on the road again. You play in Philly. This is a tough stretch. The tough stretch continues. Philly, Cleveland, Dallas. Yeah. So like this from December 29th until January 17th, you play one bad team in Washington. And this could be a season-defining stretch of like, how do they make it through the end of December and halfway through January? What does the record look like?
Yeah, it's a tough schedule. If you look at how January is placed, you have 10 games against teams that are probably way above 500. And then you have 4 horrible teams, which you need to beat. So it's not an easy feat. I mean, yes, you have Brooklyn and Utah at home, but you play Dallas twice in a week, which is, I mean, it starts to be a rivalry. Then again, you have that stretch in over the East Coast, Cleveland, New York, and Philly. Yes, you play in Washington, but we all remember what happened in Brooklyn last year. Atlanta and Brooklyn, they were
Totally
like on their legs after a very emotional beginning of the year stretch. So,
true.
I mean, did that define what OKC did in the end? No. Was it? Should they improve from that? Yes. I mean, this is exactly what I was saying before. Team games like Atlanta and Brooklyn last year, this year they should win, and they should
Yeah.
win because they are just so much better. I'm fine getting blasted by the Knicks at home because Jalen Brunson has 55 games on like 15 trees. That can happen.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I think that OKC should be better in general. They should finish January with a 9-5 record, something like that. They should
Mhm.
really be way above 500 in January, even if it's a terrible month for them.
Mhm.
Probably, I don't know if it's the hardest, but it's not an easy one.
Yeah, it is certainly one. It's the hardest month so far. December's not that
Yeah,
hard. The first 6 weeks of the season is littered with mediocre teams. Like you play Chicago and Atlanta, you play San Antonio a couple times, you play
yeah,
Portland. You got Orlando's good, but they're not like some juggernaut. You know, Dallas on the 17th is going to be another big test. Like that's another one to circle at home in OKC. Like how do they match up against Dallas? What adjustments have they made from actually seeing this team over and over again? And then you get to see them a little bit different this time around. I think like that is going to be fascinating. You move into February, um, Sacramento, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Toronto, all at home. Another like long home stretch there. They're blessed with some pretty nice home stretches where you're home for
yeah,
like a
yeah. They
week.
have a lot of back to backs, but they have a lot of home stretches, and they have in February, March, they have some very weird same team back to back. They play mini 3 times in a row, basically,
Yeah,
which it's not in a row, but it's February the 13th, and then back to back 23 and 24. So
yeah,
basically, it's almost like a playoff series where in a matter of
totally.
11 days, you play a team 3 times,
Yeah.
and
And you have
these,
your trap game against Utah on the 21st. You
yeah,
know, like that's a total
just
trap
after
game.
also play,
Yeah, total trap
yeah.
game. It's like, yeah, after the All Star break, you come back on the road, you play Utah, and by that time, Utah is like definitely going to be all in the tank and like wanting to lose as many games as possible. But still, trap game. We saw the tanking Thunder beat some teams they shouldn't have.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. With Ludort pumping his chest after a 3 ball, that
that's right.
was probably one of the. Was it the last game they won over like a gazillion days?
That's a
Well,
good question. Let me
it was
see.
around that time. No, it was earlier in the season.
Yeah, it was that. That was definitely earlier in the season, but
Yeah,
that was a
but that
wild game.
yeah, that team won their last game around like the first week after also break, and then they basically lost all the way out, which was a wizardry by Presti. But a nice month, February. I mean, a lot of meaningful games. Like the fact that they play mini so many times. I mean, last year they didn't face themselves each other in the playoffs. I do think that seeing this new era Thunder with 2 big men and seeing guys like Gobert and Towns, it's nice. Even if I mean, even Vincent Collet benched Gobert, so who knows what happens.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this is I was so happy about that, but I mean, this is me hating like everything about France except
Yeah.
food and wine and stuff like that.
Well, and everything went so well for Minnesota last year.
Yeah,
Even playoffs that it's like what it is be interesting to kind of see what is what for them next year. They lost some role players, and they're I think they're going to be really good. And so, like,
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, that's a big one. Yeah, I'm looking back at that. Lou Dort made 3 in the corner after Horford started for that team. Shea had 42, 8, and 4 in that game. Lou had 16 points on 12 shots. Horford was 16, 7, and 7. It's just hard to remember like a 16, 7, and 7 game from Al Horford for the Thunder, isn't it? Like, it's just hard to like.
Yeah. How many games did he play? 25?
Let me see. I can get there pretty quick. He played 28 games.
28. Yeah.
Yeah, he was 14, 6, and 3 in 28 games for the Thunder. Man.
It was he. I mean, we are seeing it now in Boston. Not that keeping Horford was an option by any stretch of imagination. So don't say, hey, the Thunder should have like gone in another direction and keep Al Horford. That was not on the table. But if you concoct a player that should be the best big man to play alongside Chet, then I mean, last year Al Horford, or 2 years ago Al Horford makes a pretty perfect pairing. We'll see with Hart. I mean, maybe Hart is better. Who knows? March.
Yeah. He definitely could be. How many of the 28 games did he have double digits? Al Horford.
I have no idea. Can you give me a hint?
No.
High or low?
No.
Then 11.
24.
Wow, that's a lot.
24 of the 28 games he had double digits.
Yeah, it was playing. It was shooting a lot of threes.
Yeah, in 6 of those games he had 20 points or more.
Wow, I completely forgot about that.
Against the Timberwolves, he had 26 points, 7 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks.
Wow, that is
it just like blows my mind that actually happened in Oklahoma City with Al Horford, because like we think of him as like this like small blip on the radar, which it was. It's 28 games. It's not like it's something crazy, but he was awesome for the Thunder. He was so good for OKC, and if it was just like it's just like one of those things where he belongs in like this culture and with this team in some capacity, but it just never really worked out the way that it should have. Okay, so on to March, and then we'll wrap up here shortly. In March, they start the month with a back-to-back San Antonio and Houston. The San Antonio game again on national television. The league is hell-bent on the Thunder and the Spurs being rivals again. And like they're going to make this happen. And I think that Wemby and Chet will love for this to be a rivalry as well. So I don't think they're going to be upset about it. I think it's going to be great theater. I think you have the Denver home back to back for the Thunder, which is just like a weird one where they play at home against Denver at noon on ABC on the 9th, and then they play Denver again on the 10th at 7 p.m. That is going to be so strange. It's going to feel a little bit like a playoff series, but also you're playing just outrageously frequently. Like that's just like so strange to play a team back-to-back days. It's just going to feel really weird, especially a noon game followed by a 7 p.m. game. There's just like a lot of, I can already envision myself, telling Joe Masato and Rylan Stiles how weird it feels, to be here again.
And it's 6 games in 9 nights.
That's a tough one. Yeah. That is a lot. That's a lot of basketball to be played
in March. They play too much in March. Then they back to back at the beginning of the week, back to back at the end of the week, Detroit and Milwaukee. It's a lot. It's not a very difficult month in terms of opponents. You have plenty of bad opponents, like you have Detroit.
Yeah.
You have Chicago at home. You have Charlotte. You have Portland. Maybe you already said that. But then you play a lot. You have some middle of the pack teams like the Clippers, the Bucks. You have Houston. You have Memphis twice, which we have no idea how they will play out in this season. But it's, you play way more than the days you rest, which is normal for NBA. But I mean, this month seems like pretty heavy on games.
Yeah, that is a tough
It's
month. That is
16.
one where you can see the Thunder like dropping a rando game to Detroit, like they did last year.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of basketball to be played. And then they finish out the season in April. Detroit, Houston, Lakers, both at home on a Sunday and a Tuesday.
Yeah, weird.
Phoenix road back to back. That's a tough one. And then they finish the season with Utah and the Pelicans. So just kind of a mixed bag, not a terribly difficult schedule, but just kind of a strange little schedule to end April. But yeah, when I look at the schedule itself, holistically, I think March is going to be really tough, like you said. I think that month is going to be exhausting for the Thunder. I love the long home stretches that they have. The one in November that we talked about, I think like that's a really big one to circle. Then the one that ends in December, going through the 7th of January, where they'll be at home, I think is great. A few like
And then they have one which is not really a long homestand, but like from basically the end of January up
yeah,
until mid-February, just
yeah.
before the All-Star break, they are basically at home
They
because they
play
have
one,
one
two.
back-to-back
Yes,
in
yes,
Memphis, which is again a short flight. I think it's 2-3 hours.
yeah. It's a short flight to Memphis, and they come right back and then play, and they have a day of rest, and they get to come back and play again at home. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a strange like quick road trip, after and hopefully like they'll take care of business against Toronto and like rest the starters in the fourth, and then
Or they
play.
would just rest them and keep maybe Shea or someone else at home for that stretch
I
because
would
it's
support I would support strategic resting for this team, because
yeah,
I think to me it's all about getting to the playoffs. One, style of play is like the most important thing. Like, have you established a
yeah.
style of play that can be consistently great in the playoffs? If you've done that, excellent. Next, let's just be healthy, get into the playoffs. Not that this team like struggled with that last year. They had great health last year, but it's still just like, hey, let's be mindful of the miles that we put specifically on guys like Chet Holmgren, you know,
Yeah.
and Shea for that matter. Like, let's make sure these guys feel good. And that's in the strategic resting, like you talked about with the Toronto game. But then in the month of March, like, can we rest some guys against Portland on that first Friday in March? In against Charlotte on the third Friday. Can we get guys rest then? Like those, that to me would be nice. And against teams that like people aren't going to be like super jazzed about anyways. So I think, overall, I don't, the national TV stuff, like I've had my gripes about that, certainly, and those still all stand. They should have a game on Christmas. They should be featured on Martin Luther King Day. Heck, they should have a game on April Fool's Day, but they don't. I don't love that, but there are some like big stretches where you can just see like, hey, these will be extremely fruitful times for this team that still needs to gel, still has a lot of work to do with regards to establishing who they are. And I can see spots in the schedule where they can have a really significant chance to do that. So those are definitely the stretches that I look forward to kind of, locking in and watching this team.
Game you will never miss for any reason.
That's a good question. In person, you mean?
In
Or
general.
just in general?
Yeah. Maybe
Um,
the one where you want to really watch the game and not just cover the game.
I would like for them to have played a little bit. Like, I would say like that first game against Denver, we'll all be locked in, but like the truth is they're still going to be working some stuff out. So I would say that noon game on the 9th of March against Denver, this is after the trade deadline. This is after like everybody knows who they are. and now it's like chips on the table. Who's going to win?
Yeah.
Really, it's those two home games against Denver that I'm like, and I know people have downgraded Denver in a pretty significant way because of things that happened in their roster, but I still believe that they're going to be like one of the standards in the Western Conference. And I would love to see how the Thunder measure up in a back-to-back with Denver. Like it's going to be like two of the weirder, games for the Thunder because they are back-to-back Denver. But I do think like that is the time where it's like, okay, let's see what you got. And then you get the next game in Boston.
Yeah, that is mine.
That is going to be incredible. Like I very much look forward to that. Okay, I've got to go. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Hope everybody's doing great. And we will talk to you guys again on Wednesday.